St. Vincent and Grenadines, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I have the honor to speak today on behalf of the 14 member states of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, and to align CARICOM with the statement made by the non-aligned movement. CARICOM welcomes the initiative of Japan in its capacity as President of the Security Council for convening this open debate and for its April 5th concept paper, which is invaluable in shaping today's debate on working methods. CARICOM would also like to thank the members of the Council for their insights today and their own inputs on this issue. Mr. President, CARICOM, more than most, takes particular interest in the areas of transparency, efficiency, and interaction with non-members. Our interest is born of our historical absence from this chamber, and indeed, the appalling dearth of small island developing states in general among the membership of the Security Council. The last CARICOM state to serve on the Security Council began its term 1 decade ago. 1 year later, in 2001, Singapore became the last of the SIDS to hold Council membership. 73 of the United Nations 192 member states have never served on the Council. Of these 73 member states, 29 are SIDS. Therefore, although SIDS comprise only 20% of UN membership, they represent a full 40% of the states that have never served on the Council. Over 78% of SIDS have never held a non-permanent seat on the Security Council, a percentage that is replicated within our own CARICOM region. As such, our historical position as Council outsiders has made CARICOM acutely sensitive to the practical effects of working methods on transparency and interaction with non-members. From our unenviable position of largely being on the outside looking in, CARICOM recognizes that recent measures and adjustments by the Council have resulted in some improvements. However, a great deal more can and must be done. In that regard, and within the context and constraints of this open debate, CARICOM stresses the following 4 points. First, it is critical for the Security Council to accept that reform of its working methods, however far-reaching and however effective, must necessarily take place within the context of wider Security Council reform, including an increase in permanent and non-permanent membership. Non-members will have little interest in interacting with a body whose legitimacy is compromised by its stodgy refusal to reflect changing global dynamics. Working methods therefore represent a single component of a comprehensive reform exercise and must proceed in tandem with these complementary reforms. Mr. President, I note parenthetically that many members today bemoaned the workload of the Council. But most organizations, bodies, and businesses, when faced with an increased workload, efficiency demands that that body expands so that they can deal and handle the increased workload. Second, Mr. President, as a general rule, the Security Council should refrain from encroaching upon the functions and powers that the Charter or tradition have placed within the purview of the General Assembly. It is far better for the Council to construe its mandate strictly and to do a small number of things well than it is for it to be more expansive and do a host of tasks poorly. The seemingly inexorable mission creep of the Security Council is troubling, particularly to member states like ours, which have been primarily creatures of the General Assembly alone. Any unnecessary encroachments by the 15 members of the Council into the functions and powers of the other 177 non-members will serve to undercut the compelling logic and unique goals under which the UN was established. Third, further adjustments in working methods are required to enhance the transparency, openness, and interaction of the Council with the wider membership. CARICOM recognizes the need for efficiency by the Council and indeed supports greatly enhancing this efficiency and effectiveness. However, optimizing transparency, interaction, and efficiency is not a zero-sum exercise. In this regard, we view as particularly useful the suggestions that have been made and refined by the S5 group of countries regarding inter alia reports, consultations, and the implementation of decisions. Fourth, CARICOM is curious as to the broad and expansive reading that some states give to Article 30 of the Charter. The argument that only the Council, operating in a vacuum and advising itself, can adjust its working methods, unfortunately raises more thorny questions than it answers. For example, CARICOM questions how, as a practical matter, working methods can be determined solely within a body in which 2/3 of its members are replaced every few years. If we are to accept the concept paper's assertion that, quote, for many elected members, learning the procedural aspects of the Security Council is a challenge, unquote, how can those elected members in a limited period of time both learn and reform the working methods, only to be replaced by a host of new elected members that will have to repeat the process again? And why would incoming members that would not have contributed to the Council's working methods in any way feel any fealty to them? Only the permanent members of the Council would have any degree of influence or allegiance to such an arrangement. It is impossible to read Article 30 in such a way as to make it immune from the General Assembly's explicit authority to discuss and make recommendations on any matters within the scope of the Charter relating to the functions of any organ of the UN, including the Council, and to make recommendations to the Council on those matters. Articles 10 through 12 of the Charter establish the scope of the General Assembly's powers and its limits with absolute clarity. The Council may have the responsibility of formally adopting its rules of procedure, but the General Assembly is clearly empowered not only to discuss the Council's working methods, but to make recommendations to the Council, whether or not those recommendations touch and concern the rules of procedure. Given the acknowledged role of the General Assembly in conferring legitimacy on bodies, decisions, and norms, the Council would be well advised to adopt rather than to resist the relevant recommendations that may yet arise from the wider membership. Mr. President, in conclusion, the welcome changes to the Council methods thus far, as outlined in the concept paper, have served to highlight the promise and possibility of further beneficial changes. It is universally accepted, we believe, that the Council is not operating at its optimum efficiency, transparency, accessibility, or effectiveness. Adjustments in working methods, as part and parcel of a wider range of reforms, can assist in remedying these acknowledged deficiencies. The continued evolution of the Council and its working methods is therefore necessary and desirable. The Security Council is not a cocoon, a vacuum, or an impregnable and fossilized bunker. It is of this world and of this membership. It must therefore reflect this world and respond to this membership. CARICOM hopes that one or more of our members will soon grace the inner sanctum of the Council again. But notwithstanding that hope, we desire a Council whose working methods establish it as a nimble, efficient, transparent, and accessible body that is open to the views of the wider membership and reflective of changing global realities. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Parliament Representative St. Vincent and Grenadines.